Hey everybody, what's good? It's your host and my name is Professor Khalil Amani, and this is Khalil Amani's World 100. Well, we are at the point. I was a little tired today. I've been dealing with family members in the hospital. We've been at the hospital, my sister-in-law, we've been at the hospital pretty much every day for the last 4 or 5 days, having dinner and lunch at the cafeteria. But she's doing well. She's on her way to recovery. So shout out to my sister-in-law, Tracy, my wife's sister. But we are here now to start this wonderful series, a series I've done on a other channel that I used to have. But we're going to start all over again. That's right. And I'm going to make sure that this channel never gets in trouble, because we have moved away from the beef and talking about insignificant people that matter not. That's right. This channel is going to be here, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. We're over the 200 subscriber mark. I've been putting my little dance shorts out there, and my shorts are making my channel grow. I have 1,000 view video, I have a 2,000 view video, and I have a 3,000 view video thus far. On my old channel, I had a 100,000 view video, I had a 400,000 view video, I had a 718,000 view video. So I know we can get back to that. I have been viral on TikTok and YouTube. Being viral is no small matter, and we strive to go viral. But we're going baby steps, because it's quality over quantity, you know? Of course, I could do the beef videos, I could do the talking about celebrities videos, and I could build my channel up real fast. But I'm not interested in doing beef, continually as my channel. I'm not interested in talking about other people's accomplishments and goals and the great achievements of other people. That's why I named my channel Khalil Amani's World 100. It's about me and my world. This is about my ego and my narcissism. Nah, not really. But we're going to start our series on Sodom and Gomorrah. There's been an outpouring of love. People saw me over there on the pro-black channel, my brother from another Sodnetter. They saw how my spectacular vernacular, how I was able to command a discussion for 1 hour and 37 minutes. A beautiful discussion over on Sodnetter's channel. Go check for it. About 2 days ago, check for it. That's right. I did a beautiful thing over there. When you talk about Bible and history, religion and stuff, a lot of people need looky-loos. They need somebody to sit on the panel with them on the stage. They need to go live and have a second or third person up on camera with them, because they really don't have the information to carry the show, to disseminate the information. But I'm not like them. That's why I very rarely, if ever, do lives when it comes to information. And I don't even seek to go on places like Sodnetters and other places. People got me all messed up. I'm not like these other YouTubers where I look forward to going on people's channels and doing interviews. You all know that. My bestest YouTube friend the beautiful and intelligent Leak You Interloper Nation. I've only been on her channel one time, if memory serves me correct. And she know she can have me on her channel anytime she wants me. But I'm not thirsty to do interviews or to appear on other folks' channels and to be all up on camera. I'm just not. And you all know the reason why. You know the reason why. But if you're new over here, I say welcome. But if you're new over here, you might not know that me, Khalil Amani, that I have been on national TV 6 times. I'm no stranger to the media. I've been in places like Straight Stuntin' Magazine. I've been in places like People Magazine. I've been in places like Spin Magazine. I've been in newspapers like the Miami Herald and the Denver Post and the Los Angeles Times. How dare people think that I'm a lapdog for Sonetter? No. We're going to get to the sodomite discussion. This is the introduction, but I thought I'd cover these things before we get into it. That's right. My dear brother Sonetter has been asking me damn near, but not quite begging me for the last 16 months to come over and get it in. And Sonetter knows I'll go over whenever he wants me. But for the last year and almost a half, I have put Sonetter off. Simply because I'm not one to want to do shows. Sonetter has asked me on several occasions to come over and speak my speech. And so this most recent outing, being on Sonetter's, again, he called me and asked me for us to do a show. If I'm lying, I'm flying. If I'm lying, Sonetter will see this video and he'll call me and say, why are you lying on me? Because I'm not. I don't mind going on Sonetter's channel, but I'm just not the kind of YouTuber that wants or needs to go on other people's channel. It's a fact. Sonetter has one of the biggest channels out there that talks about Bible information and Black history. He has over 200,000 subscribers. He is well known. He is a channel that if you're trying to get noticed and known for what you speak about, he's your guy. But look at Khalil Amani. I go over there sparingly. I could go over there weekly. I could have him post videos all the time over there. I could be on Sonetter's panels and debate. I could be all up in the debating, debate this person, debate that person. I could be all about Sonetter's program.
Have you been wanting to
Facts. But I'm not. On my own independent and autonomous YouTuber. I like doing my own thing. I don't like being argumentative. I don't like the mean-spiritedness of debates. I don't like making enemies. Because when you debate, you make enemies. People talk about your families and your background, ad hominems. That's not what I'm into. But the real reality is, I have enough information to carry my own shows day in, day out for the rest of my life. Facts upon facts upon facts. So understand that when you see me on Sinetter's channel or anybody's channel, 99% of the time I have been asked to go on their channels. I don't seek out interviews, although I will probably, there's a couple of channels I will seek out. You know, the Vlad TVs, you know, the No Jumpers, you know, those kind. The Breakfast Club, Drink Champs, you know. Oh, I will seek interviews from those types of YouTubers because they're up in the, they get hundreds of thousands of views. It's a win-win. So yes, I will put myself and avail myself out to the super huge YouTube stars. But for the average YouTuber, under 500,000 subscribers, I will probably never ask them. They'll have to ask me. It's just the way it is. And see, when you've been on national TV, when you've been on CBS, when you've been on the Investigation Discovery Channel, when you've been on the Biography Channel 2 times, when you've been on the Oxygen Network, when you've been on the CW Channel, national TV, flown in first class, all expenses paid, hair, makeup, dress, backstage, green room, private dressing rooms, limousine from the airport, a big check when you finish. When you have had that kind of media experience, it takes a lot to get up to do things like Sinetter or anybody on YouTube. For me, when people ask me for an interview on YouTube, and I'm not above anybody on YouTube, don't get it twisted, but when people ask me for an interview on YouTube, after knowing that I've been on the CBS network, the Biography Channel, the Investigation Discovery Channel, the Oxygen Channel, the CW Channel, and CBS. When you've been on major national mainstream television programs, it takes a little bit to get up, to get the excitement to do. Even someone like Sinetter, it's not a put down, it's what it is. So when people try to say that I'm all like a lapdog wagging my tail, I just want to be back on Sinetters, it might be true that I'm super excited and I'm wagging my tail. That might be true if it were not for the fact that you're looking at a guy who's done 6 national mainstream TV shows. Let me give you a comparison that you might can understand. Say you made $1 million a year doing whatever you did. You lost that job and now you're making $20 an hour. The excitement is just not there. Say you dated a movie star. You dated Denzel Washington. You dated one of these fine ass women. You were dating Nicki Minaj. You were dating J-Lo. And the relationship ended, and now you're dating Joe Blow from around the way. Now you're dating Lakeisha from across the neighborhood. It's a big difference between dating J-Lo or dating Denzel Washington to dating, the local hood rat around the corner. That's what it's like when you've done national TV. That's what it's like when you've been in national magazines. That's what it's like when you've been in all types of newspapers around the country. That's what it's like. You're asking me to get excited over a hot dog when I had steak 6 times over here. It's not a put down of YouTubers. It's not a put down of Sodnetter. It's not a put down of any YouTuber. It's a fact of truth. When you've done national TV, when you have been paid $2,000, $2,500, $5,000 for an hour episode, when you've been flown first class, when you had a limousine waiting for you curbside at baggage claim, when you were taken to a 4 or 5 star hotel and said, order whatever you want to order on the menu, when you had dressing rooms and wardrobe changes and lights, camera, action, when they gave you that check at the end of the segment, when you're visiting a different city, New York and Miami and Los Angeles and Seattle, to do the shows. What a great and grand experience it is. And a YouTuber that sees me on Sodnetters thinks that I'm happy as a newborn puppy wagging my tail to go back over there. Like Sodnetters is the highlight of my media career. Again, this is not a put down of YouTubers and Sodnetter. I'm just making an analogy of where I come from, and when people try to paint the narrative that me reappearing on Sodnetters is the big enchilada, the big kahuna. But I get it. The people that think that I'm super excited to go on Sodnetters, that I'm no longer banned and Sodnetter has allowed me to come back over after slapping me on the wrist for whatever, that never happened. That never happened. It simply never happened. The only way that those types of narratives can be true, that I'm a Sodnetter lapdog and that I ran back over there like a, like a do-boy, like a sycophant, like a brown noser. The only way those types of things could be true is if I had no other place to go. If I had never been on 6 national TV shows, if I had never been in the biggest magazines and the biggest newspapers in America. But I'm not like them. I'm different, and I think you all know it. I think you all know it. I said I've been in People magazine. Some would argue that People magazine is the most popular, one of the most popular magazines in America. And if Khalil Amani, there I am in the white turban, if Khalil Amani can be in People magazine, I ask you, what is any YouTube channel to me? All right, enough of that. I want to start this series on Sodom and Gomorrah. And so on this first video, the introduction, I just want to talk. A discussion. A discussion means I don't need to provide any citations or sources. Don't worry, this particular series will probably be about 8 to 12 parts. And each part will be about an hour and a half long. But that's how I roll, and that's how I do it. I'm not one of those Bible teachers that gives a subject an hour or two and they on to the next. They think they have done the job. I'm not like them. I got a lot of commentary to do. And so if you're watching this video, you are actually on the ground floor. This is the first part and the introduction. So make sure, if you're going to be a part of this series, to learn that which I guarantee you, a lot of you have not known about Sodom and Gomorrah. Don't be skipping around, because you're going to get your feelings hurt. Don't be skipping around. Start with the introduction, and then do part 1, part 2, part 3, so on and so forth. So that when you get to the end, you will have a full understanding. You will be so equipped to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah. And I guarantee you, for many of you, when you hear Sodom and Gomorrah being talked about, taught, teached, and preached, you will know exactly when they err, when they deviate, and when they got it wrong. Well, you ask, what is it about Sodom and Gomorrah that you don't already know? For 99% of you all, high 90s, you don't know what really happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, those of you who have been paying attention, who have watched me on Sodnetter's channel, you already got a foot up. You already know what happened in Sodom. But the ideal that is taught in Christianity, the ideal that is taught amongst people like the Hebrew Israelites or the Israelites, that which is taught about Sodom and Gomorrah from most religions, the world body of Christianity, and all of the so-called black Hebrew Israelites around the country, dare I say, they all got it wrong. What a bold statement from one little man on YouTube with 200 subscribers. That's why it's necessary that I teach it and reteach it. I said, most of you who think you know about Sodom and Gomorrah, I'm here to tell you, you've been tricked and lied to and hoodwinked. And I'll prove it right now by simply stating, if you think that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed because of their homosexuality, you are 100% wrong. That is the litmus test as to whether you really know about Sodom and Gomorrah or you don't. Again, if you think that Sodom and Gomorrah's destruction was about being gay and being homosexual, if you think that, you're wrong. 100,000% wrong. And that's why you should watch this very exciting series Oh, don't worry. I'm not just going to lecture. I'm going to give you sources upon sources. Bible dictionaries and biblical encyclopedias that will back up everything that I say. I got it like that. Now, in my childhood, I was brought up as a Baptist. And then after about at the age of 20, I shed my Christianity. And I also became a Hebrew Israelite under Yahweh ben Yahweh in Miami in the early to mid 1980s. That's right. And as a Christian, a Baptist Christian, I was taught that Sodom and Gomorrah were homosexuals, and that's why God destroyed those cities. When I converted and became a Hebrew Israelite, that same misnomer, that same untruth, that same lie was taught to me as a Hebrew Israelite. This is why I'm so proud of myself as a student of biblical studies, as a researcher, as a teacher, and as a professor. That I don't just simply follow the BS of teachings from other eras. I love that about me. I love that about me. And from age, I don't know, 7 or 8, whenever I first heard the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, I'm kind of hoarse, so I'm not going to be here too long, I can tell. From my earliest beliefs and understandings of the Sodom and Gomorrah story, all the way up until becoming a Hebrew Israelite, and even after my Hebrew Israelite days, by age 25, I had given up the Hebrew Israelite cult and went about my life. But I still held fast that gayness and homosexuality were against God's laws, and I still clung to the story of Sodom and Gomorrah's destruction being caused by their homosexuality. And then a strange thing happened. A strange thing happened. At the young and tender age of 35, while working on my first book, I'm a writer if you didn't know it. I'm a writer. I am the author of 6 books. They're all right here. Why do I have more books? Oh, I'm about to say there's a book in here. That's not my book. I said I'm the author of 6 books. Can you dig that? All these are my books. You see, there's my book. You see my name right there? There's my name. See, there's a book right there. There's my name. There's my name. See, there's another book. There's my name. See my name right there? Here, another book. There's my name. Another book. There's my name up there. And another book. There's my name down there. I've written 6 books. One of my greatest accomplishments. I'm so proud of myself for doing this. But somewhere at the tender age of 35, while writing my first book, My first book ever was called Ghetto Religiosity 2000, Third Millennium Liberation. While writing this book and while researching to do the work, I stumbled upon a great truth about homosexuality in the Bible. That's right. But let me go back before that. Basically, what I'm trying to do on this introduction video is give you my qualifications for speaking on homosexuality in the Bible and for going against all of what I have been taught and what you have been taught to tell you you have been taught wrong. I'm giving you my background, my curriculum vitae, as it might be, my resume. I have been studying the Bible for over 40 years. And even in college, which I have 2 degrees, but while a student at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, I would read serious religious literature. I stayed in the library at UNO, University of Nebraska at Omaha. I stayed in the religion department section. I stayed in the philosophy section. I stayed in the occult section. I read a lot of books at the University of Nebraska. Not only that, I became very close friends with a man named Marshall Taylor, who was the owner and proprietor of a bookstore called Afro-America Bookstore in Omaha, right down off of Lake Street in North O, as they call it, North Omaha. He would be my mentor, and he would suggest certain readings, ask me have I read about this person and that person, what did I know about this person and that person. And I realized that I had some, as much as I was reading, I had some reading to do and some learning to do. Facts upon facts. I was a hellacious reader in my late 20s into my 30s. I was a vociferous reader in my late 20s into my 30s. Reading was my passion. And I read everything I could read. I read all the great religious scholars. I read James Cone's Black Power, Black Liberation. Is that what it's called? James Cone. It's a blue book. It's the blue book. I think I can find it real quick. Yeah. I don't see it offhand. That's okay. I read all the great religious and academic giants to see what they had to say about religion, about God. I read James Cone, the great black liberationist, theologian, Dr. James Cone. I read Latin American theology as taught by the great Gustavo Gutierrez. I read feminist theology as taught by the great Rosemary Radford Ruther. Sexism and God Talk, one of her seminal works. I read all the great ones. I read Troeltsch and Panikar. I read all the great scholars. I read Paul Tillich, who had some of the most dynamic things to say about the deity, about God, about the Creator. You know what Paul Tillich said? Paul Tillich said, It is as atheistic to affirm the existence of God as it is to deny the existence of God. The hell? I said I read Dr. Paul Tillich. I read them all. I read all the great theologians. I read Bonhoeffer. I read the great philosophers that dealt with religion. I read them all. I said I read them all. I'm telling you these things to let you know what qualifies me to teach about Sodom and Gomorrah and to take such a wayward stance, to take such an aberrant stance, to go down a road less traveled in speaking about Sodom and Gomorrah. That's right. I read the great Paul Knitter. I read a lot of people. I read Merlin Stone's When God Was a Woman. I read them all. I read We the Black Jews by Yosef A. Ben Yachanan. I read them all. If there's a book I didn't read, then I just missed it. But during my 20s and 30s, I read so much religious material that I had overflow in my brain. Now, most anyone else, oh well, you just have a lot of information stored up in your head. But for me, I had a safety valve. I had a way out of having all of this information in my head. And that was, I was a writer. I had not published anything yet, but I had 2 degrees in English. I understood the writing process. I understood the reading process. I understood the research process. I understood things like, how do I cite my sources when I borrow someone's work to bolster my work? I understood MLA citation. MLA is the Modern Language Association citation and work cited. I understood how to apply that to things I might write in the future. I also understood APA, American Psychological Association's bibliography, citing sources, how to use someone's work and put it in my work, and how to give them credit for their words. When I was in college, working on these 2 degrees in English, I wasn't thinking about being a teacher. When I was in college working on these 2 degrees in English, I wasn't even thinking about becoming an author or a writer. Although I did have 2 teachers, 2 professors at 2 different junctures of my college tenure that came up to me after reading my essays on various books I had read. I had 2 professors say, you know, if you get serious, you might have a career as a writer. You could be a great author. I was told that by 2 white European teachers, professors, a lady and a man. But being young and silly, I blew them off. Yeah, whatever. I went to college late in life, in my late 20s into my 30s. And I was simply there for self-discovery and self-promotion, and to say I got that degree, the first in my family to be college educated. I didn't get a degree to get a job. I didn't get a degree to teach. I didn't get a degree so I could write books. I simply wanted to better myself. I wanted to better myself. I wanted my children to go, wow. I wanted to set a standard so that my children could look at their father and go, Daddy went to high school and graduated. Daddy went to college and graduated. I wanted to set a standard and a precedence for my babies. Not that they have to go to college, but at least they have a roadmap. And I was their Thomas Guide roadmap. I'm just giving you my background before we get into talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. What qualifies me to teach about Sodom and Gomorrah? What qualifies me to go against the grain, to go against everything you have been taught about Sodom and Gomorrah? How dare you, Khalil Amani, come along, and I'm in my 30s, I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s, I'm in my 60s, and for all of my ignorant Christian life, I have believed that the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah was based on their homosexuality. How dare you come and try to upend that belief? Well, you know, they say knowledge should be from the cradle to the grave. Knowledge should be from the cradle to the grave. But the sad reality when it comes to biblical and religious and spiritual knowledge is this. Most of what we know for the average American citizen, most of what they know about the Bible, about religion, and about God, they knew it by the time they were in the 7th, 8th, 9th grade. And that was the extent of their religious and biblical growth. Mostly everything that the average person walking the street knows about God today as a 40-year-old, they knew as a 20-year-old. They might have known as a 15-year-old. Most of what we know about the Bible, we learned it somewhere between elementary school and junior high school, and we fell off and we stopped. Most of us still think that Adam and Eve ate an apple. We stopped growing. We may have gone on to college to learn nursing, to learn psychology, to become a doctor or a lawyer, to go and become into the engineering world. We get degrees, bachelors and masters and PhDs in specific subjects. But when it comes to our biblical and religious learning, we've learned all that we're going to learn by age 15, 18 years old. We've learned it all. And we stop. We simply are done learning about the Bible. What was so shameful recently, I saw a thing on YouTube where a man walked into a grocery store and said, I'll give you $100 if you can quote one Bible verse. Do you know 8 out of 10 people failed it? 8 out of 10 people could not, for $100, they could not recite one scripture from the Bible. He didn't ask them what book, chapter, and verse. He just said, I'll give you $100 if you can recite one Bible scripture. I might even do a YouTube video, and I might go to a store and do my own survey. Offer people $20 if they can recite a Bible verse. 8 out of 10 people could not recite one Bible verse. He dealt with people that were in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. It shows you, and it proves my point, that most of what we learn in elementary and junior high school years about God, religion, and the Bible. I mean, the shortest verse in the Bible, John 11:35 or so, Jesus wept. Now give me my $100. Jesus wept. Jesus cried. That's a verse. It's 2 words. 8 out of 10 people didn't know Jesus wept. 8 out of 10 people didn't know, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Now whosoever shall believe in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. John 3:16. 8 out of 10 people didn't know, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:1. 8 out of 10 people didn't know, the Lord is my shepherd and I shall not want. Psalms 23. My goodness. My goodness. My goodness. That's why I teach. And just so you know, I am not of any organized religious persuasion. I'm not a Baptist. I'm not a Methodist. I'm not an Episcopalian. I'm not a Seventh-day Adventist or a Jehovah's Witness. I'm not a holiness. I'm not Kojic, Church of God in Christ. I'm not COG, Church of God. I'm not Southern Baptist or Baptist. I'm not Pentecostal. I'm not non-denominational. I'm not Catholic. I'm not no part of Christianity. I'm not a Muslim, Sunni, Shiite, or otherwise. I'm not a Jew, Hasidic, Ashkenazi, Sephardic, Black Jew, Ethiopian Jew. I'm no Jew. I'm not a Hindu, a Muslim. I'm not an atheist. Atheist means they don't believe in God. I'm unaffiliated with all religions, if you must know. I don't have a bone to pick or a slant, or I don't have a position to go down to try to make this religion be the true religion. Bear with me for a second. Bear with me for a second. I'm no religion, but I understand every religion probably has ever been made, because I study all of them. I can speak to a Christian in Christian terms. I can speak to a Muslim in Muslim terms. I can speak to a Jew in Jewish terms. I can speak to a Hindu or a Buddhist. We can discuss the Eightfold Pathway. I can speak to the Hare Krishnas. and talk about Krishna and Brahma and Balarama. I can talk about the Eightfold Pathway. I can talk about Nirvana. I don't just read the Bible. I don't just read the Quran. I don't just read the book of Going Forth by Day and Night, aka the Book of the Dead by the Egyptians. I don't just read the Bhagavad Gita, which I got 2 on my shelf. The Bhagavad Gita. You never heard of it, have you? I keep turning around looking for books that I know I might not find. That I know I might not find. Here it is. I did find one. I said I read the Bhagavad Gita. What you know about the Bhagavad Gita? That is the holy book of the Indians. You know, over there in India, the Indian people. This is their holy book. I read it all. I read the Ethiopian Kebra Nagast. I read the Apocrypha. I read the lost books of the Bible. I read the Jewish pseudepigrapha. I ain't scared of none of these niggas' scriptures. And so, I'm just giving you a little background on how and why I can teach what I teach. That I'm not just somebody on YouTube trying to create a new persona, trying out, you know, what can I say on YouTube? I was doing this. I was teaching and writing and authoring books years before I came on YouTube. That's the point. That's my resume. That's my curriculum vitae. That's my background. Not everybody can say that. You got YouTubers who teach Bible, who tried to teach Bible, who talking about writing their first book in the age of YouTube. I did it before YouTube came of age. And so, as we get closer to talking about this homosexuality stuff, a young man, 35 years old, having read a shedload of books on all of the religions of the earth. I got a book. I think I got a book called World Religion or some shit. The religious world, where you read about Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, Taoism, Confucianism, Zoroastrianism. I read about this stuff. Not only that, I read about the world of myth, because religion and mythology go hand in hand. When you read and study mythology, you read not just about the Greek myths, not just about the Roman myths, but you read about the Jewish, about the Hebrew myths. Oh yeah, the Hebrews, the Jews, the Israelites, they too have myths. I even have a book called Hebrew Myths. Here it is. Hebrew Myths. If you can't see it there, you can see it there. Hebrew Myths. You all know my name used to be Lloyd Clark. Look at when I read this book. Lloyd Clark, 11/15/1993. Some of you might not even been born then. I'm just giving you my background, my pedigree, as it would. So there I was, having graduated 2 times from college, having read a shitload of books, all this knowledge in my head at 35. But lucky for me, lucky for me, I had an outlet. And my outlet was my passion for writing. And so, I remember like I remembered yesterday. Let me tell you quickly. Some of you all know that I have had some government dealings, that I was a government informant, and that I was a part of the group of people that helped take down the murderous cult leader named Yahweh ben Yahweh. Some of you all know that I had to go into the witness protection program after testifying against the leader. That's how I became Khalil Amani. That's not the name my mother and father gave me. That is the name I chose as a member of the Federal Witness Protection Program. I wrote a whole book about it. It's this book right here. This book tells you all about being a government informant and being in the Witness Protection Program. Yeah. I said, here's my book that discusses all of that. And there is the name of it. It's called My Id, Ignorant and Dysfunctional, Life in the Yahweh Cult and the Witness Protection Program, Khalil Amani. It's a memoir. A memoir. So there I was, as a member of the government's Witness Protection Program, being relocated and having my identity changed, and having about 8-9 months of nothing to do after graduating from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. There I was, day in, day out, evening and nights, staying in a hotel, waiting to be changed, waiting to get located, waiting to see what the government is going to do with this here young 35-year-old body. And I remember being flown into Denver, Colorado, and then being greeted by an agent that I called Cowboy Gary, and then being drove up Interstate 25 North, headed toward Wyoming, excuse me. Cheyenne, Wyoming was the destination that the government wanted me to stay there, or at least temporarily. And I remember driving up Interstate 25 and seeing buffaloes, cows and shit, horses. And I thought to myself, any place that has buffaloes surely ain't got no Negroes. Buffaloes and Negroes, I don't think they go together. I said, oh my, I'm going to some lily white state and city. But I said, okay. So the government puts me in Cheyenne, Wyoming at a Holiday Inn the first night that I dropped down as part of their witness protection program. It was a Friday. It was a Friday. So while I'm there, I'm studying. I've already graduated from San Diego Mesa College. I've already graduated from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I'm doing all this serious reading. I got books galore. I got books in storage. I got to go figure out how to get once I get settled. And this first night I leave the Holiday Inn to go out and venture out into the little city of Cheyenne, maybe find me a little nightclub, a little bar, have a drinky drink, even though I didn't go to the drink because at that time, no, let me back up. I didn't go to have drinks because I had not had a drink yet. I'm 35 years old. I never had an alcoholic drink. But just find me somewhere I can hear some good black music, see some of my black people, some soul music and dance. Maybe even bring back me a nice young tenderoni to my hotel and, and break her back. Something to keep me warm during the night. Something to do, a little hottie. And I didn't care if she was black or white. Just a woman. Go back to my hotel and let me blow her back out. So I go to this little hotel, this little club called the VFW. And for some reason, I decide that I'm going to be grown. And I'm sitting at the bar and I ask the bartender, give me a rum and coke. Okay, one rum and coke coming up. Now mind you, I'm 35. I've never been an alcoholic drinker, never had a real alcoholic drink, never been drunk in my life, don't smoke, don't drink, don't know what the feeling of being drunk or high feels like. On top of that, I hadn't had a morsel of food in my mouth, in my stomach, for over 12 hours. I don't know why. I had a whole ghetto knot in my pocket. When the United States Marshals dropped me off, they gave me about $800. Plus, I already had like $5,000 or $6,000, $7,000 at the hotel. I had about $10,000 on me. Yet I hadn't eaten for like 12 hours. I don't know. I don't know. There I was that night. Being grown, give me a rum and coke. I took about that much of that. And I'm sitting at the bar. There's a dance floor. There's chairs, people dancing. It's like a 40 and up crowd, black crowd, playing a lot of oldies and goldies and slow songs, Earth, Wind and Fire. The music is great. I take about that much, and it went straight to the head. It was a tall glass. And if you know anything about these old school black clubs, they don't fuck around on the alcohol. They give you alcohol. A lot of alcohol and a little bit of coke. I was sitting at that bar like this. Faded, blasted, wasted, on tilt. I was drunk as fuck for the first time in my life, the first night that I arrived in Cheyenne, Wyoming via the United States government witness protection program. But I tell this story because while I was sitting there in my drunken stupor, something said to me, write a book. Write a book. Write a book. And I knew what my mind was telling me. And I knew exactly what I was going to write about. It was going to be religious in nature. I was going to speak to the young people, gangbangers and hip-hop heads and pimps and prostitutes, street people, people that were disillusioned with the church and with Reverend Chickenfoot. I was going to speak to people, black people, young black people, who believed in God but didn't believe in the church. That was my core and my target audience. Speak to this young hip-hop generation. And at a young, tender age of 35, I thought I was an old man. I was young myself. But when you're 35, everybody younger than you, you look at, they're young. But I'm sitting there in this Cheyenne, Wyoming club in a drunken stupor, being told to write a book. Lucky for me, that same night, I was 35. I was quite handsome. I think I'm handsome today at 65. But at 35, I was quite handsome. There just happened to be this older woman sitting next to me, probably late 50s, maybe early 60s, but well put together. Well put together. She had a ring on every finger, beautiful hair made up, jewelry around her neck. Everybody kept coming over and saying hello to her. She was reverential. She was a regular there, but people were very respectful when they approached her, men and women, shaking her hand, kissing her hand, giving her light hugs, speaking just for a moment and moving away. This lady looks at me and sees me in my drunken stupor and says, baby, I think you had too much to drink. And I'm looking at her because I am really in a wonderful space in my head, thinking about the possibility of writing this book. I was almost mad at this older broad, this older woman, for disturbing my heaven. She was disturbing my nirvana. She was disturbing my catharsis. I was having an ethereal moment, an out-of-body experience, fantasizing about writing this book when she broke that and asked me, was I drunk? And told the bartender, bring me some water, bring him some water. And they had a kitchen there, and she ordered a plate of catfish and spaghetti and sweet rolls and potato salad and baked beans and shit like that. She put it in front of me and said, baby, have you eaten today? I was like, no. I started eating, and the minute I bit down on that catfish, the minute my palate tasted that spaghetti and that baked beans and potato salad, I realized how hungry I was. And I devoured that plate and drank a whole thing of water. And it brought me back down to earth. And being that I was there with no car because the government just set me down, I had taken a taxi there. She offered to take me back to my hotel. Well, we didn't quite go to my hotel. We went back to her place, and this 60-year-old woman took this young 35-year-old man, and she rode me like the Lone Ranger rides Silver. We had sex, and then she took me back to my Holiday Inn hotel. But the ideal of writing that first book had been planted, and I knew that once I got situated, I was going to write that book. And back in those days, 1996, I didn't have a computer. I was afraid of computers because they were computers. I had a typewriter. Even though I didn't know how to type, I could use these two fingers and my thumbs. And I tell you, no lie, I got back to the hotel. I got my typewriter out. I don't know how, but I had a typewriter. I guess I had bought it. Or I went out and bought it. And I began to write my first book. This book right here. I began to write this book as a member of the Federal Witness Protection Program, having time on my hands, hella knowledge and information in my brains, and all the time in the world to put it down on paper. And that's what I did. Now, to the homosexual stuff. I didn't have to do a lot of research because the research had been done 6, 7, 8 years ago up until that time. But I knew I was going to have to get my books, and I knew I was going to have to get some sources going. So I was still going down to, the government moved me from Cheyenne down to Denver. They said you can live there. And I began to go downtown Denver to the main city library, and I began to just read more books and do research. And see, here's the thing about research that the average Christian or the average Israelite won't do. See, if you call yourself a Christian or an Israelite, you're only concerned with information that aligns with your religious beliefs. But when you are a true methodology researcher, you take what you think you know and you sit it on the table. You take it out. When you're researching, you take any thoughts, any preconceived notions that you think you know or believe or have. When you are a real researcher in search of the truth, no matter where it takes you, no matter what rabbit hole it goes down, when you're a real researcher, you're not afraid of where the truth might lead you. And because I am not a Christian and I am not an Israelite, I am not a part of any religion, it was easy for me to sit my knowledge on the table and treat my brain like what the psychologists call a tabula rasa. A tabula rasa is a blank slate. Empty my mind, empty my brain, and allow new information to go in and allow the hunt to begin. And so as I was researching and writing side by side, writing and researching, a weird thing happened one day. I had not planned to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah. I had not planned to write about homosexuality. I had a list of things that I wanted to cover in the book, my first book, and none of them had to do with homosexuality. But I began to research, which I had already researched, but I was doing more research on the ideal that God was first understood by humans as a woman, as a she, as a her, as a queen, as a creatress. I was doing my research in the area of goddess worship, and this is where I stumbled onto the homosexual question. As I began to study and dig deeper and deeper and deeper and realize things that sex, hetero, bi, and homo sex was part of the goddess religion, it led me to the Sodomites. And then I began to research the Sodomites and understand that they weren't just a bunch of gay dudes, that they had a whole religion, the Sodomite religion. And I began to read passages in the Bible showing how the Sodomites were very influential in the Israelite community. I even read that some of the Israelite kings who had mothers like King Asa and his mother, the queen, that she was a Sodomite worshiper and that she built trinkets and omelets and statues and veneration and adoration type little figurines dedicated to the Sodomites. This was an Israelite queen. And I began to read where King Asa, the Israelite kings, had to chase and run the Sodomites out of the land because they were so goddamn influential to the Jews, to the Israelites, to the Hebrews. I began to understand that whoever these people called the Sodomites were, it wasn't so much about the fact that they might have been homosexual. It was that they were highly influential toward the Israelites. So much so that Israelites, like the King Asa's mother, started practicing and worshiping and building statues dedicated to the Sodomite cult and putting them right next to the Israelite statues, the Yahweh temples and stuff. And I said, oh my. I said, oh my. These Sodomites are deeper than ass fucking. These Sodomites are deeper than being rump rangers, brown towners, and Hershey highwayers. Oh no. I got to dig. And I began to dig more and more and more. And the more I dig, as I was writing my first book, I realized I was going to have to deal with Sodom and Gomorrah. I was going to have to deal with the ideal of homosexuality. And then one day I had a real breakthrough. You know what my breakthrough was? My breakthrough was when I realized through reading scholars and scholarship, through reading the historical record, I had a breakthrough. I had a premonition. I had a catharsis. I had a wonderful moment of the third kind. And that was the day I realized that the Bible's condemnation, that the Bible's condemning same-sex attraction, same gender loving people, LGBTQ folks, homosexuals. I realized that when the Bible wrote that man shall not lie with man, I realized in one day why the Levitical priests even wrote that law. And when I realized what was really going on that would make them say that man shall not lie with man, I knew I was going to have to write that shit and make it a part of my book. And I realized I had opened Pandora's box. I realized I had unearthed and unlocked a hidden truth that the whole of Christianity, the whole of Christendom, that every Hebrew Israelite had been lied to and didn't know they were being lied to. A day came when I recognized that when the Bible started teaching that man shall not lie with man, it is an abomination. That they did not write that scripture because homosexuality in and of itself was bad, despicable, and against God. What I realized is that these niggas called the Levitical priests, the Levites, they were writing to stave off. They were writing to counteract. They were writing man shall not lie with man to try to eliminate or alleviate or to stop the groundswell of Israelite people joining the Sodomite movement, the Sodomite religion, and joining the goddess religions, who, by the way, used sex as worship and ritual. They used heterosexual straight sex. They use bisexual sex. And they use homosexual sex to show the ultimate veneration and adoration for Baal and for the Queen of Heaven that's written about in Jeremiah chapter 7 and Jeremiah chapter 44. The Queen of Heaven, whose name was Asherah. I realized that there was some shit in the game, as they say. I realized that the Bible writers were being biblically insincere. I realized that the Bible writers were trying to pull a fast one. And I said, I gotta write about it. And it became a chapter in one of my books. At 36 years old, my whole understanding and perspective of gay people changed in one day. I, like many of you, thought that God was against homosexuals, that God was going to send homosexuals to the hellfire. I thought that at 36. But I had an epiphany through that rabbit hole research that made me throw that goddamn Christian homophobic bullshit in the trash. It made me throw my Hebrew Israelite homophobic bullshit in the basura, in the garbage. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if I went into my research thinking that I knew what I knew what I knew. That's the difference between me and these other folks. They will do research as a Christian. They will do research as an Israelite. So things must line up with being a Christian. They must line up with being an Israelite. But I went into this thing with no religion, no opinion. I went down the road less traveled. And when I came up out of that rabbit hole, I knew that I was going to have to speak out as a straight, heterosexual black man. I was going to have to be a voice, a reasoning, a voice of truth, and deal with whatever backlash came. I knew I would be called a faggot, a homosexual, a down low brother, everything in the world, and I was, and I still am being called that. But I got tough skin. And that's when I began. And from there, from that research, which I put in my first book, my first 3 books, these first 3 books were actually one book. But when I had a publisher say, we love your work, but it's too big, it's too thick, we're going to make a series out of that manuscript. And it became 3 books. Book 1, Book 2, and Book 3. But it's in Book 2. It's in Book 2 where I deal with Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm about to close out once I find this here. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. So Book 2, Ghetto Religiosity. I started. Anyway, I gotta go. But get ready for the series. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.